Okay, the cultivating the three virtues, and we have here the initial verse by Master. The one cloud and one rain are one appearance of one flavor. I will come to explain what I understand it to be on the next slide. They are truly without any difference, nothing but water. So we need to delve into these two lines to understand what Master is trying to say. After the Buddha's initial enlightenment, when he became one with the universe, he peacefully abided in the avatamsaka state, which is the state of the supreme enlightenment. Then today, he can finally freely express his original intent and teach the wondrous Lotus Sutra. And that's when he revealed the original intent of teaching the great Dharma vehicle. So this metaphor of the rain, the water, in which appearances in which it takes, let's reflect upon ourselves and what are we made up of. It's not the body, it's not the mind, because the mind is impermanent, and so therefore we have this consciousness, right? So we have this consciousness, and if we reflect that as a metaphor as the body, the problem is that our consciousness has been contaminated, and just like water, it can fall into mud and it get contaminated, and yet it can evaporate into rain. But then when it does evaporate, we can still be contaminated with other gases in the atmosphere. So even when rain falls, it's contaminated with carbonic acid. So in very much the same way in our consciousness, that lifetime after lifetime, our consciousness has been contaminated, and that's why that's in the eighth consciousness. And our habitual tendencies will form in this life. So therefore, in understanding this, the teaching of the Buddha Dharma, is we need to purify ourselves, and that's what the journey of the spiritual path is. And much that we purify ourselves and to the state of enlightenment, that we must be able to be pure enough that even when you return back to the shore of samsara to help libre sentient beings, and we can even go to the mud without being sullied or without being contaminated by the defilement of others, and that's a state of purity that we should be in. But we have this pure consciousness and the purity in us. We no longer be afflicted by the defilement of others, and that's what the state that we should be in. But since beginner's time, they have experienced three suffering of that was yesterday, suffering of suffering decay, and suffering of action. And all this suffering that we go through, that so long as we learn to purify whatever becomings that unfold in our life, then we'll be able to purify all our past causes. And so we must always contemplate what there is life to teach us. Because our life, it becomes a frivolous life that we suffer without learning, and that's what delusion is about. So the lessons learned is, so we must cast away all the contamination that we have. And so in process of eradicating all of our defilements and afflictions, and we must be very diligent in our practice and upholding the faith that we have in the path. So we must earnestly engage in contemplation. The contemplation is important for us to realize the profundity of the teachings that is contained therein. But without actually apply those teachings in our life and go to the experiential learning, whatever we know is academic. It's only when we apply to life that we can then realize what it means of the teachings. So The perfect three virtues over three asamkhya kalpas. And that's firstly for the Buddha to attain that enlightenment. And the three virtues which I won't run through, which Brother Alex has so extensively covered. So in contemplation, the turbulent times are a time of great learning. So turbulent times will refer or for contamination. And they all, imagine there's a glass of water that contaminated set at the bottom. When turbulent times arise, they get stirred up. So when it gets stirred up, then we realize that we are filled with contaminants. So therefore, it's a great time for learning to understand what sort of contamination that we have within us. So you're in the midst of a kalpa, and each kalpa will eventually end with calamities, whether major or minor. So even minor calamities of famine, war, and pestilence are devastating. We have been through 2 world wars. We are in the midst of a global pandemic with a pestilence. And famine does arise in different parts of the world, especially when the weather changes. And all this, and these are just minor calamities, but we have to go through all these turbulent times. So we're in the midst of this pestilence that we need to then understand ourselves. How do we then calm the mind? And a lot of people, especially in the Western economies, they can't stay in, they can't go through this period of lockdown. So your mind should not be disturbed with daunting thoughts. And that's what this daunting thought are haunting thoughts that will give rise to affliction and mental defilements. So be glad that you can face up to your karmic retribution, that we understand all this period that may be disturbing to us, but they're all manifestation of our karmic retribution. So we need to do so with fervent faith and inner hope, as well as peace within us. It's only then we'll be able to be calm, we'll be able to face these turbulent times. So on relationship, this was spiritual relationship, and I share a lot with you all every day about relationship, but you do also have spiritual relationships. The relationship with the divinities and noble beings are special relationships, just as Master has, through the Lotus Sutra, explained about the Buddha and other divinities as well. Siddhigarbha, for example, Kuan Yin, Manjushri, Samantabhadra. And Samantabhadra is in the last chapter of the Lotus Sutra, and Kuan Yin is on chapter 25 of the sutra. So that will last for kalpas until enlightenment is reached. So if we do have those relationships, we should mindfully be reverent in our thoughts. There are spiritual protectors, guides, guardians, teachers, and gurus. And Master always say that 3 inches above us are spiritual beings. So we don't know who they are, but some of us do. So even ourselves, that we walk through the path, we also meet our spiritual guides in a human form, just like we have with the Master. We also have with the family of practitioners. So therefore, there are spiritual treasures that we are uphold, because those are the affinities. And this affinity may have from the previous life, may have established in this life, but will go into your future. So to be preserved with reverence, devotion, and gratitude. And that's what would then help us to hold on to a fervent faith and understanding of the path. So we do so daily in our prayers, especially. Okay, Kanan, brothers and sisters, thank you.
Kanan so much, Brother Chin. We are eternally grateful for your wonderful sharing every day.